What price does a society pay when it turns a blind eye to the screams behind closed doors? The story of Vera Pekhtova is a brutal answer. 15 neighbors stood paralyzed outside an iron door, their ears filled with the frantic screams of a young woman. For 6 agonizing hours, Vera Pekhtova, just 22, was being brutally murdered on the other side. 7 desperate calls were made to the police, pleas for intervention that echoed unanswered in the sterile halls of the precinct. Inside the police office, life continued as usual. Video footage later revealed officers moving with no urgency, their expressions unmoved by the terror unfolding just miles away. The frantic voices of the callers seemed to irritate them more than the reality of a life being extinguished. Driven by sheer panic, Vera's neighbors finally resorted to a crowbar, forcing open the iron door. But their desperate act came too late. Vera was gone, her life violently stolen while those sworn to protect her remained indifferent. Tragically, this horrific inaction was just the beginning of a series of devastating failures in a case that would send shockwaves through Russia. To truly understand this tragedy, we must rewind to the beginning of Vera's story. Vera Pekhtova was a vibrant 22-year-old from Kyiv, Russia. Beautiful and full of life, she was intelligent, artistic, and blessed with a singing voice that brought her numerous school victories. While many predicted a future in the arts, Vera surprised everyone by choosing to study economic security, driven by a desire to fight corruption. Her parents had divorced when she was young, but Vera maintained close relationships with both, even forming bonds with their new partners. However, her connection with her mother, Oksana, was particularly deep. They shared everything, hopes, fears, and secrets. It was through this bond that Oksana knew about Vera's relationship with Vladislav Kus, a former schoolmate back in 2016. Vera and Vlad reconnected at a party and a romance quickly blossomed. But beneath the surface lay a troubling reality. Vlad's life had been marked by hardship. His mother had left when he was young, leaving him with a father who constantly tangled with the law. The situation spiraled into tragedy when Vlad witnessed his father's suicide with a hunting gun. The aftermath of this horrific event shattered Vlad. He dropped out of school in the 9th grade, adrift and turning to alcohol. Those who knew him described him as shy, angry, and violent, with a reputation for meanness and a criminal record for theft. It was clear to Vera's parents that Vlad was not the right person for their daughter. Her father pleaded with her to leave him, and her mother sensed that Vlad was only interested in Vera for what she could offer. But Vera was in love. Blinded by her feelings, she dismissed the glaring red flags. She believed her love could heal him, could change him. Her social media was filled with seemingly happy pictures of them, painting a picture of a blissful couple that was far from the truth. In 2019, Vera moved into an apartment in Kirovo, near her college. Her parents helped with the rent. Soon after, Vlad moved in, and the facade began to crumble. Vlad refused to contribute, his days consumed by drinking. He made no effort to find work. Oksana saw the truth and warned Vera that Vlad was using her. Her friends echoed these concerns, telling Vera he was only after her money. But Vera refused to listen. Instead of leaving, she began to hide their relationship, ceasing to share pictures of Vlad and his family online, and Vlad stopped attending family events. It was as if she was trying to compartmentalize a part of her life that was causing her immense difficulty. Her parents feared the worst, that Vlad was taking advantage of her. By November 2019, Vera had reached her breaking point. Physical altercations had become frequent, and she finally understood that Vlad would never change. She ended the relationship. Her parents were relieved. Vlad was supposed to move out of the apartment, but he refused. His comfortable life with Vera was something he was unwilling to relinquish. He even threatened to murder her if she didn't stay. He likely didn't believe his own threat, as his brother Stanislav dismissed it as a spur-of-the-moment outburst. But they were wrong. Vera, wanting to avoid further conflict, moved into her college dorm with only the bare essentials, leaving most of her belongings behind. Vlad remained in Vera's apartment, even as her parents unknowingly paid another month's rent. Over the next few weeks, Vera tried to arrange a time to retrieve her things. She called Vlad repeatedly, but he either didn't answer or offered flimsy excuses. Then, on January 12, 2020, he called her out of the blue, telling her to come get her belongings. Vera had a test the next day, so she planned to go to the apartment around 5 p.m., intending to leave as quickly as possible. A friend was supposed to meet her at the dorm at 6 p.m. to help her move the rest of her things. Vera never made it out of that apartment alive. At 5:08 p.m., Vera texted her friend, saying she would be done packing in 30 minutes, take a taxi, and be back at the dorm by 6 p.m. to meet her. But then, the tone of their communication shifted. The next message revealed Vera and Vlad arguing. Vlad was insistent that no one, especially her friend, could enter the apartment. Shortly after, Vera sent another message, this time whispered, a clear indication of her fear. A fourth message arrived before her friends could react. This time, it wasn't Vera, it was Vlad. He had taken her phone. That's when the situation likely turned violent. Vera's friend, sensing something was terribly wrong, continued to call, but there was no answer. Then, at 7:19 p.m., Vlad sent her a voice message, attempting to allay her fears. He claimed everything was fine and that he would help Vera with her things when they were finished. Vera's friend reluctantly backed off, not wanting to interfere, unaware that those hours were to be Vera's last. In the early hours of January 14, 2020, the silence of the apartment building was shattered. At 3 a.m., Vera's agonizing screams echoed through the hallways as Vlad brutally beat her. Initially, only the next-door neighbors ventured out, but soon, terrified residents from all over the building gathered outside the door. Her cries for help were audible through the walls as she begged for her life. In desperation, they called the police. At one point, Vera managed to escape Vlad's grasp and ran to the iron door, pounding on it and screaming for help. But the door was too strong. The next-door neighbors tried to break it down, but their efforts were futile. They called the police again, their voices frantic as they heard Vlad dragging Vera back inside. The horror continued. Another neighbor's screams could be heard during the next call to the police. Vera was still at the door, pleading for help while Vlad continued his brutal assault. Yet, the police never arrived. Still, Vlad's initial violence wasn't enough. He retrieved a sharper knife and slowly, deliberately, stabbed Vera 5 more times. Outside, the neighbors were frantic, desperately searching for anything that could breach the iron door. Each agonizing scream from inside the apartment made them feel increasingly helpless and enraged. As they listened to Vera being beaten, they continued to call the police, their pleas growing more desperate with each unanswered call. Among those trapped on the other side of the door, listening to the unfolding horror, was Stanislav, Vlad's own brother. He had spoken to Vlad earlier that day, and something in their conversation had left him with a sense of unease. He rushed to the apartment but found himself helpless on the other side of the locked iron door. He knew getting inside was crucial to saving Vera's life. In a span of 3.5 hours, 7 desperate calls were made to the police. Vera's screams and the sickening sounds of the attack reverberated down the hallway, but no help came. In Russia, domestic abuse is often not treated as a serious crime. It is frequently dismissed as a family problem. The deeply ingrained cultural belief, if he hits you, he loves you, persists. In 2017, a law decriminalized first-time domestic battery if it didn't result in hospitalization, reducing it to a mere administrative offense punishable by fines or warnings. Efforts to strengthen protections for women have been blocked, often under the guise of preserving traditional family values. Vera was left to live, and the police ignored every desperate plea for help. Just before dawn, around 6:30 a.m., one final, terrifying argument erupted, and then, silence. The nightmare was over. Vera, who had been pleading for her life at the door, suddenly stopped speaking. Then, Vlad's voice, soft and almost gentle, broke the silence. "Vera, please forgive me. I love you a lot." This was followed by a dull thud. Vlad had delivered the final, fatal blow to the back of Vera's head, causing catastrophic brain damage. But even then, he wasn't finished. He wrapped the iron's cord around her already lifeless body and pulled, ensuring she was not alive. Moments after Vera's last cries ceased, one of the neighbors found a metal crowbar in a nearby parking lot. They were desperate. They began to pry at the iron door. It must have felt like an eternity, but finally, they forced it open. The scene that greeted them was horrific. Blood was everywhere, splattered on the walls, the ceiling, and pooling on the floor. Vera's body lay lifeless, brutally mutilated. They found Vlad in the bathroom, drunk and lying on the floor, the bloody kitchen knife still clutched in his hand. It was almost 7 a.m. when one of the traumatized neighbors made one last call to the police, her voice trembling with grief and disbelief. Finally, the police arrived. They came to take Vera's body away. Investigators found 56 distinct wounds on Vera's body, head injuries, deep cuts, and broken bones. It was an act of unimaginable cruelty. Vlad tried to escape, but his neighbors, fueled by outrage, prevented him. News of Vera's horrific death ignited fury across the country. Public shock turned to outrage when video footage emerged of emergency workers casually sipping tea, seemingly oblivious to the desperate calls for help. It appeared that the neighbors' frantic pleas and angry shouts irritated them more than the fact that a woman was being murdered. The officer in charge, Mikhail Basov, offered the unbelievable excuse that he only had one patrol car left and had sent it to check on an elderly man who had already passed away. This pattern of neglect continued after a shift change. The new officer, Dmitry Sarachev, received calls about Vera's situation but claimed there were no available cars and no fuel. It later emerged that fuel was available, but no effort was made to deploy resources. The most agonizing truth was that Vera might have been saved. When the case finally went to court, 3 emergency workers were charged with failing to perform their duties. They were found guilty, but their sentences were shockingly lenient, just 1.5 to 2 years, suspended. They all retained their jobs. They were ordered to pay Vera's family a mere $369 each in compensation. This was the extent of justice for Vera. The system had failed her at every turn. The day after the murder, during his interrogation, Vlad attempted to fabricate a narrative. He claimed that on January 12, he had called Vera and offered to help her move her belongings to a new apartment. He said they agreed to meet in the afternoon of January 13. According to Vlad, along with Vera's things, they also packed his own, as he didn't want to live in the apartment without her. He then claimed they had a pleasant evening, drinking beer, liquor, and vodka until 5 a.m. without any issues. He alleged that the situation changed when he brought up their relationship. He claimed Vera became angry when he suggested they reconcile, accusing him of knowing she was seeing someone else. In his twisted version of events, she began to insult him, hitting and kicking him repeatedly. He stated that her threats angered him, leading to the fight. Vlad's offer to help Vera move was a cruel deception. He had stocked up on alcohol, likely hoping that if they drank enough, the tension between them would dissipate. But when it became clear that Vera had no intention of rekindling their relationship, his drunken anger and jealousy erupted in a horrific attack. He attempted to downplay his actions, claiming he only hit Vera 4 times with the palm of his hand, suggesting she must have hit her head on a cabinet when she fell. He then admitted to strangling her with the iron's cord, but claimed it was not to kill her, but to make her pass out. I put the iron chain around Vera's neck after that. I made the cord around her neck a little tighter. I put pressure on her neck for about 15 seconds. I didn't know at the time that what I did could kill Vera. I chose not to kill Vera. I wanted to scare Vera, so I pulled the cord tighter around her neck. I really wanted her to pass out. It was time for her to sleep for 15 minutes. He even claimed that after removing the cord, Vera was still making noises, leading him to believe she was okay. It wasn't until he tried to wake her later that he realized she wasn't responding. He checked her pulse and found nothing. Only then, he claimed, did he understand what he had done. He then stated he lost consciousness. Totally. The next thing I don't remember. I only remember that I went to the bathroom at some point. As the investigation progressed, Vlad gradually confessed to more and more gruesome details, yet his statements lacked any genuine remorse. I don't remember how many times I hit her, but I think it was the same number the expert said. I admit that I hurt her in all the ways that were listed in the report. I wanted to be alone. I didn't think about how much pain she was in during our fight. She yelled at me and called me names. I didn't like hitting her. I didn't like it when she screamed when I hit her. I told her to be quiet. Meanwhile, at the funeral home, staff worked tirelessly for hours to make Vera's face presentable, but the extent of the damage was irreparable. Oksana, her mother, said Vera was completely unrecognizable. More than 1,000 people attended her funeral in a small church, with many having to stand outside. The entire town was devastated by her brutal death. In a chilling display of callousness, Vlad later stated, "I'm sorry for what I did. Vera died because of what I did, but I never meant to kill her. Allow me to say sorry to her family." The injustice continued in court. Oksana revealed that the official charge sheet stated Vera was hit only 4 times and choked 4 times, despite forensic evidence showing 56 distinct wounds. The 3.5 hours of beatings and torture were barely mentioned. Vera's family and advocates against domestic violence recognized this as a deliberate attempt to secure a lenient sentence. Alyona Popova, a prominent activist, argued that the Russian government seemed more concerned with protecting the killer and the negligent police officers than with delivering justice for Vera. She pointed out that in Russia, this attitude towards domestic violence is the norm, viewed not as a crime but as a centuries-old family custom in which the state should not interfere. As a result, the state does nothing, waiting for the next victim to be found. Vlad was eventually sentenced to 17 years in a strict regime colony and ordered to pay Vera's family a paltry 36,939 rubles, approximately $369, in reparations. But the injustice didn't end there. In April 2023, just a few months into his sentence, Vlad was released from prison. His punishment was exchanged for service in the Russian army on the front lines in Ukraine. He was free after only 6 months. Russia has been recruiting prisoners to bolster its forces, and Vlad was one of them. When a picture of Vlad surfaced online, Vera's family learned the shocking news. Oksana was devastated and terrified. It's not fair that the man who tortured and killed her daughter was given a second shot, but Vera never did, she stated. Her own safety now felt precarious. He can at any moment murder any of us, the victims, out of revenge. Even though it hurts, Vera's family and human rights campaigners are still fighting for justice. Alyona Popova urged people to speak out, don't keep quiet. Let out a loud scream. Those who kill will be able to walk down our streets as long as we don't say anything. When President Putin was criticized for this policy, he explained that these criminals were atoning for their actions by fighting in the war and risking their lives. Thanks for tuning in to another gripping true crime story. If you liked this episode, please like, share, and leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more captivating stories.